Am I the asshole here for allowing my son to disinvite his stepmother from his bar mitzvah? My ex and I had been divorced for 7 years. We have 3 children, Amy 17, Tom 16, and Ben 14. Our divorce was amicable and we co-parent well for the most part. I am a non-observant Jew and my ex is a non-practicing Catholic. We decided to teach our children to be decent people and allow them to decide what faith, if any, they wanted when they were old enough. My ex remarried 2 years ago, and they have a 6-month-old daughter. She is a devout Christian, non-denominational. Since she came into their lives, she has actively tried to convert them. I wouldn't have an issue if she was just inviting them to church, but she is constantly telling them that if they do not accept Christ as their savior, they will go to hell, as will me and my family. After this, my children refused to see their dad unless it was out of their home without her. Their dad finally put his foot down and put an end to it. Now on to the problem. My parents went to Poland a few months ago to visit family and took my children with them. While there, my dad took them to Auschwitz and Ben was very moved. When he came home, he started attending temple with my father and has been working with his rabbi to prepare for his bar mitzvah. He's having a small party afterwards at my parents' house. When his stepmother heard this, she really ramped up the crazy. She waited until my ex was not home and invited a bunch of people from her church over, and they ambushed Ben. They tried to lay hands on him to save him from the fires. That's crazy. Oh my God. My daughter physically intervened, called an Uber, and took her brothers home. My ex stopped by a couple of hours later and apologized profusely for what had happened. My son accepted his apology, but stated that his stepmother was no longer welcome at his bar mitzvah or the party afterwards. My ex got very upset by this and stated that this was being disrespectful and he could not go somewhere where his wife was not welcome. My son said then, "Well, I guess you're not invited either then." He then locked himself in his room. My ex, his parents, and his wife have all been texting and calling, berating me. When my parents found out what had happened, they stated that his wife was not welcome in their home, but they told my son that he should still allow his father to come. My ex is adamant that he will not come without his wife, and my son is adamant that his wife is not invited. I refuse to intervene on his wife's behalf, and my ex says I am an asshole. Am I? Just a few things for clarification. I'm trying to respond to all comments, but there's getting to be too many, so thank you everyone for your input. I plan on showing this to my ex. 1. No, she wasn't like this when he married her. She went to church, but it wasn't until they got married that she became more involved. I was actually surprised that she was with him, knowing that he was not religious, but I figured that opposites attract. In the beginning, she was great with our kids. They liked her, and they spent a lot of time with her. Her pushing my kids towards Christianity was little things like insisting they bow their heads for grace at mealtimes, buying them books by religious authors, not allowing what she deemed inappropriate movies. Harry Potter, anything with profanity. What did Harry Potter do wrong? Hanging up religious pictures and signs with Bible verses in the house, etc. Once she started with the "you're going to hell if you don't" nonsense, I got their dad involved and it ended. At least for a while. 3. Their dad is very supportive of our son embracing Judaism. He is paying for private Hebrew lessons and has offered to send him to Israel the summer after high school, providing it is safe to go. 4. My ex and I met our freshman year of college. We were together for a few years before getting married, and only got married because our first was on the way, and both sets of our parents were very insistent that we do so. My parents especially were very big on the legal aspect of it for my protection. 5. We separated after almost 20 years of being together because we had started to become unhappy together, and despite counseling, could not resolve some of our differences. There was no infidelity or anything like that. We only got divorced when he met his current wife so that they could marry. We had no formal custody agreement in place. My parents have me seeing a lawyer next week to put some parameters into place and to protect everyone involved. And 6, he promised that the kids don't have to be around his wife until they are ready to be. I asked, then why is it a big deal that he doesn't want her at the ceremony and party? His response is that he wants the invitation extended, but he will make sure that she won't go. He says that it's disrespectful and a snub to not invite her. I told him that that sounded like a bunch of bullshit and that she was not going to be there no matter what. In the comments, OP's son might have been subjected to religious abuse or harassment. OP should make sure her son's boundaries are respected. OP says, "Thank you. I feel partially at fault because in the past, I told them to just ignore it when she made comments or to decline politely when she invited them to church. I should have been a lot more forceful, but tried to be respectful of her faith. I never expected her to go this far." Another commenter says, "Not the asshole, and it's sad that your ex is backing his nut job of a wife. Hope he understands that this is going to ruin his chances of actually having decent relationships with his kids." And OP replies, "He's always been a live and let live kind of guy. I think he's also afraid that she will take the child and leave if he doesn't support her in this. None of my children are talking to him at the moment. I feel bad for him, but this is something that he has to fix himself." Someone else says, "You need to get your lawyer involved to legally put a stop to his psychotic stepmom." OP replies, "Right now, none of our children are talking to him, and they refuse to go back to his house. I told him that they are of the age that they can make their decisions, and I will not force them to do anything that they don't want. They have all blocked her and her family. I really don't want to go to court as I don't have the money, especially with the oldest going to college in the fall, but I support them 100% on staying away from her." Another commenter asks, "What is wrong with your ex-husband? I too am a devout Christian and have nothing but love for my Jewish brothers and sisters. It is up to a man to clarify with his current wife what is acceptable with her interactions with your and his children. He needs to step up like a man." And OP replies, "I agree completely. And I really don't understand it because when we were together, his parents were pressuring us to have all of our kids baptized, and he stood up to them." OP then explains a bit more about her daughter, who physically intervened the meeting with the stepmom and her church friends. "No, my daughter intervened before they touched him. She said she had a feeling that something was going to happen because they came into the family room where all 3 were watching TV and got into a circle holding hands and were praying out loud about all 3 of them. She said that they were all frozen staring at these people in a kind of what the hell way. But then when they let go of each other and started heading towards them, she grabbed her brother and pulled him out the front door. My ex has sworn that he will ensure that the kids are never left alone with her again, and as of right now, none of them agreed to go anywhere with him either. But my parents are now insisting that I go to speak with an attorney to get a formal custody agreement drawn up after this incident. I see now that I should have done this years ago, but our divorce was so amicable, and until she came into the picture, everything was fine with our co-parenting. We even took vacations together with the kids. The only thing I can think of is that now he is so afraid of her leaving him and taking their daughter that he's throwing our kids under the bus to appease her, which is not okay." That to me sounds like what the situation is as well, but I guess he's too prideful of a person to admit that that is the real reason. I don't get why you would let your partner push her faith so aggressively on your child when he wants to practice Judaism. Like, what's going on? No, actually, you're not allowed to practice Judaism, and I'm gonna force Catholicism on you. That's just the right thing to do. Let me bring all my Christian friends around you as well, and we'll start putting our hands on you and speaking in tongues. That's a really normal thing to do, right? Those groups of people that say that, oh, we can't have any Harry Potter in this household, we can't have any of that kind of stuff, the ones that lay hands on you and say that we're going to save you from the fires, those are the people that speak in tongues. I very much question Ben's father here, OP's ex, his intentions and how solid of a person he is that he won't protect his own son from people that do not have the son's best interests in mind. Having your wife bring a bunch of people into your house to put hands on a 14-year-old child is not normal, and that is not something that you should enable, and that's not something that you should just be like, oh, you know what, he actually should be more chill with my wife about this, and he should, let her come to the bar mitzvah. If I was OP in this situation, I would be listening to the parents, I'd be going to the courts, getting a proper custody agreement in place, because why the hell didn't you do that? And then bringing Ben to the courts with me and be like, can you just tell the judge real quick what your father's partner did to you without telling us? And do you think that you should be around these people? Do you think that's a safe environment for you right now, Ben? Because I don't think the judge would be too happy to hear about all of that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. So yeah, not the asshole here, OP, for allowing your son to disinvite his stepmother from his bar mitzvah. I think you should disinvite the stepmother from visitation rights as well. Back up to the post, we have an update. On Sunday, my ex asked if I would be willing to come over and discuss what happened. He said that he felt that there were some misunderstandings that need to be resolved. I went, along with my daughter and oldest son. They asked to go. Anyway, when I got there, there was another couple there who I was introduced to as her pastor and his wife. I was immediately on guard. Stepmother stated that all she and her church group had wanted to do was pray for my children. She stated that she felt that raising them with no religion had done them a great disservice, and that I didn't understand all of the consequences of doing this. She stated that since she had had her daughter, she realized how horrible it would be to be separated in heaven from the people that she loved more than anything in the world. I said I did not believe that would happen, as I believed if there was any type of afterlife, one of the perks would be that you would be reunited with the people that you loved. She then stated that it would have to be this way, as my children had not accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Then she started to cry. I gently suggested to her that she was still postpartum, and that it was possible that her hormones and emotions were heightened, and that she was not seeing things clearly. That was obviously the wrong thing to say, because then she and my ex both became angry with me and told me that I was trying to make her out to be a crazy person. Her pastor quoted a few Bible verses and attempted to expand on what she had said. The whole time, my ex just sat there silently. I finally asked him what he thought about all of this, and he said that his wife meant well and that she was only concerned with our kids' souls. I asked him when he had become so religious, as during our 20 years together, he had not so much as stepped inside of a church outside of a few weddings that we had attended. He stated that their having their daughter had made him realize how important choosing a faith was. I told him that our son had chosen, it just happened to be Judaism instead of Christianity. I also said that it was my understanding that it was the same God for both. The pastor then again chimed in, stating that Jesus was the true Messiah, and that the Jews would be punished both in this life and in the afterlife for denying that. At that point, my daughter stood up and stated that this whole discussion was making her sick. My oldest son said that he was tired of dealing with all of his stepmother's bullshit, and he would never step foot into their home again. He said over the years, he had ignored a lot, as both myself and his dad encouraged him to be tolerant of people's beliefs, but as nobody was being tolerant of his or his siblings' beliefs, he was done dealing with their hypocrisy. He told his dad that he had no desire to either talk or see him or his wife for the foreseeable future. We then left. Today, I met with the family lawyer that my parents had found for me. He said that tomorrow we are going to go to the courthouse for a temporary restraining order and to ask for an emergency custody order. He says we'll get both. He also had me go to the police department today and make a report with all 3 of my children about what happened last week. I am so sick that it has come to this. I never wanted my children to have to be put in the middle of battling families. I am aware, as so many of you pointed out, that I underreacted. To be honest, this is the first time in my life that I've really ever dealt with anything like this. I grew up in an incredibly diverse community where everyone was tolerant of everyone else, and when my ex and I were married, we returned and lived in that community, as we felt that it was a fantastic place to raise children. So that's that. I want to thank everyone for all of their support, and for those who pointed out that I was being naive, for being kind about it. I'm sorry that I couldn't respond to everyone personally, including all of the private messages I was sent. There were just so many. I never expected this to blow up so hard. And now, onto the update, 3.5 months later. Hello everyone. I posted on here a couple of months ago after my ex's wife staged a religious intervention when my son decided that he wanted to embrace Judaism and be bar mitzvahed. Post is still under my profile if anyone wants specifics. My ex and I share 3 children, Amy 18, Tom 16, Ben 15. The people responding to that first post helped me to see that I was underreacting, and I met with a lawyer for a custody order as we had just done our own thing. I now have full decision-making for our children's religious upbringing and full custody. X has visitation every other weekend. I have been incredibly flexible and let him take them pretty much whenever he or the kids want. On his weekend, I stay with my parents and he stays in the house. The only rule that I made was that the stepmother is not around them at all, ever. Thank you, OP. Oh my god, thank you. My kids are very close with their paternal grandparents. The GPs know that stepmother is not to be around them, but twice when I picked them up, she was there. Excuse was that she had just popped in quickly to drop off the baby. I asked to let them know when they were babysitting that baby, and we would then plan a different day. But they said that it was a last-minute thing. Okay, fine. They wanted them to come for a 5-day visit over the Christmas break, not the 24th or 25th, and I cannot trust that this woman will not come over. Ben still gets incredibly anxious with her. Yes, he is in therapy. My in-laws refuse to tell her that she cannot come over because they say they do not want to be put in the middle and that it's making them choose between their grands. I reached out to my ex, who said that since she isn't coming over for long, he is not stopping it. He also said that there's nothing in the order that she can't be around, and as his wife and mum of their siblings, there is no reason that she should have to tiptoe around. I'd be taking away his visitation too for that enabling. What a piece of shit. He was incredibly dismissive, and I went nuclear on him. I told him that I have been letting him see them whenever, despite only having 2 weekends a month, that he was married to a sociopathic zealot, and that if she continued to come around, I would go back to the court and ask for supervised visits and a restraining order against her. He hung up. Then I asked the kids what they wanted. Come to find out that the woman has been coming around a lot. Amy said their grandparents asked them not to say anything to not upset me. I told my daughter that as an adult, she can go, but that her brothers would not be. Ben's look of relief broke my heart. Amy said she felt weird when the stepmother showed up. Tom said he's with Ben. I called ex-mother-in-law, told her that the children would not be coming back until they chose to. I said they were welcome to come over to see them, and I said they were so wrong to ask the kids to keep secrets. They called my ex, who berated me for punishing his parents. Stepmom sent me a text saying that I was unfair. I think I'm right, but everyone else thinks I'm the asshole. Am I? In the comments, not the asshole. Your children are old enough to set their own boundaries. If they don't want to go to the grandparents and/or interact with stepmom, they shouldn't be forced to. This is a critical teaching moment about boundaries and respect. Protect your children as best you can, including legally, if ex and stepmom insist on stomping all over those boundaries set. Grandparents are also boundary stompers and can't be trusted. OP says, "Thank you. I appreciate your input. I get that my former in-laws love my kids as well as their new grandchild and don't want to be caught in the middle, but for the life of me after what happened, I don't understand how they can't accept that. I don't want my children around her. It's the only thing that I've asked, and they're acting like I'm banning them completely, which I'm not. They can come visit them at our home at any time. We live less than 15 minutes from them." Someone else says, "Not the asshole. They have proven that they can't be trusted to protect your minor children, and as their custodial parent, you are doing what you have to do to keep them safe. Period. This isn't a punishment, it's consequences, and people who are asking to spend time with children should absolutely know the difference. Quite frankly, anyone who asks a child to keep a secret from their parents, especially a secret that involves explicitly going against the boundaries set forth by the parent, is someone who shouldn't be spending time alone with that child. OP says their defense was that they did not ask them to keep it a secret or lie, only just not to mention it. I told them that they can see them at any time. We live less than 15 minutes away from them, so it's not like I'm cutting all access to them. I really don't think that they understand how much her attempting to save them affected them. I think they understand, OP. I think they just don't care. It's not about them not having any access to the children at all. That's a lie. They just want to continue the shenanigans. They want the charade to continue. They're on the side of this absolute piece of shit stepmother, and they do actually want to get involved in the drama. I don't want to get in the middle of it. Yes, you do. Look at you. You can easily come over to their house, but you won't. You want to get right in the middle of it, and you, grandparents, are enabling it, you pieces of shit. Another commenter asks, Info. Are you 100% sure that the kids love their paternal grandparents and want to see them? And OP says, yes, but not at their house anymore. Although they still want a relationship with them, they have noticeably pulled away since this whole incident as they do not feel supported by them. Ben had started making excuses and not going after the first time that stepmother showed up, and his grandparents made excuses for her and downplayed his discomfort. But now my in-laws are digging in their heels and saying my compromise of them coming over to see their kids whenever they would like is unreasonable. She even made the mistake of calling my mother to try and intervene, and my mother, who is one of the kindest, most forgiving people that you will ever meet, told her that if it was up to her and my dad, who has had beef with them since they last minute didn't show up to Ben's bar mitzvah with no explanation, they wouldn't be seeing the children at all until they were able to admit that they were wrong and apologize to all three children. My older son's birthday is coming up, and my daughter called them yesterday to invite them to the family dinner that we are having for him. They said that they are too uncomfortable to do so since my ex won't come without his wife, but would be happy to have a second party at their house, which she and my son both refused. They just continue to keep hammering nails into that coffin. 2006 Bruin says, the scene where the stepmom and her fellow church members start to encircle the children is terrifying. Right? It sounded cult-like. This definitely sounded like one of those ultra-evangelical independent churches that are basically cult-adjacent, if not a full-blown cult. Okay, so I had something similar happen to me, but it wasn't malicious. I was having surgery in a few days, and my mother, very Catholic, asked me, not religious, haven't been to Mass in maybe a decade, to go to church with her for a vigil type thing for me. It wasn't a Mass, it was just a favor the pastor was doing, as he's also friends with my mum and had known me for like 15 years at that point. I also have no issues with him as he's a cool dude. I thought that it was just going to be like 3 of us. All of my mum's close church friends were there. We took up 2 full pews, there were so many people. The pastor had us bow our head while he prayed, and then he came and put a hand on my head and prayed more. Then he had everyone else touch me in some way while he continued praying. So I'm like 20, terrified over this major surgery, hate people touching me unless I initiate it, slightly claustrophobic, and there's no less than 20 people with their hands on me at the same time. They circled around me to get close enough to touch, and they started touching me for so effing long. I've never been more uncomfortable in my life, and I freaked out after surgery because they had to give me a catheter before I woke up, which meant someone saw my vagina. I was more okay with the catheter thing than the prayer circle. So I wasn't expecting a literal crowd of old ladies huddling around me and touching me while some cried. But again, this was not done in malice. This was my mum's way of trying to comfort me and herself, and her way of coping with the fact that her only kid was about to have major surgery over an hour away and had to stay in the hospital for a week after. I did tell her that I hated it on the way home from church though, but she was grateful that I was willing to do it for her, since I don't really participate in any religion, and she's never asked me to do anything religious like that before or since. But she's my mum, and a really good one, and it meant a lot to her that I agreed to it. Even though I didn't fully know what it was that I was agreeing to, I'm not sure my mum knew about the prayer circle either, since she knows how I felt about touching. But even when it's done out of compassion and genuineness, those prayer circles are effing terrifying and incredibly uncomfortable when you're the subject or in the middle. -100 out of 10 would not recommend. Coming in the Nile says, quote, "My in-laws refuse to tell her that she cannot come over because they say they don't want to be put in the middle and that it's making them choose between their grands. No, that's called being spineless and letting the stepmom walk over you. Grow a backbone, please." Secretly, they support the stepmom and think that she should be allowed to continue trying to convert the children. They can't see the difference between their own faith and the stepmom's toxic Christianity. I've known Christians who would be horrified if anyone was strong-armed into following Islam or Buddhism, but when it comes to Christianity, there's always that bit deep inside of them that was taught as a child that non-Christians will be banished from heaven, and they just can't see the harm in someone wanting to save you. I am almost certainly projecting, but I read them like my granny. She loved me and my sister, but my dad was the sun, the moon, and the stars. There was no moral line that she wouldn't cross for him, and if he told her to ignore us unless we did what he said, she'd have done that in a heartbeat. I guess back to OP's question, I think I'm right, but everyone else thinks I'm the asshole. Am I? No. Please take the advice of the community and realize that these people are manipulating you. This is just classic Darvo, is it not? Please realize that it's Darvo. You're being made out to be the offender when you're the victim in this instance, and you're doing what is right for your children. And you have the full strength of the courts behind you, which from my experience in these subreddits, doesn't seem to happen all that often, so the courts must think that what is happening to you and your children is pretty extreme. Don't let these nutjobs gaslight you into thinking that their behavior is not extreme, because it is, and they deserve what is happening to them. Thank you for sharing your story with us, OP. I very much appreciate it. I hope all continues to go well for you in the future. And I'd love to know what the community has to think about this one. Our next post is by user OneLastTime1713, and it's titled, "My stepsister, 20 female, texted me, 21 male, last night, asking why we aren't close anymore, and I said it's because how bad we treated each other growing up. Should I feel bad for not wanting to be close with her? My mum died when I was 6, and my dad remarried when I was 9. The woman he married had a daughter 1 year younger than me, so she was 8. At first, I loved having a new mum. She wasn't the best and will never replace my real mum, but I appreciate her trying to be there for me, and I'm pretty close with her and my dad. At first, I loved having a sister, and we got along great. I loved having a playmate during vacations, and always having a player too. The problems really started to amp up when I was 13 and she was 12. It seemed like no matter what I did went unpunished in her eyes, and she had to mock me constantly. Being a hot-headed 13-year-old usually meant that I would retaliate, and we would have those long screaming matches until either of our parents told us to knock it off, or they would send us up to different parts of the house to cool off. I also started playing football in high school, and my problem was that I was constantly getting injured. In 8 years, from 11 to 18, I broke my arm, pinky, wrist, got 2 concussions, tore my ACL, sprained my MCL, and dislocated my shoulder. On top of all of that, I was kinda chubby. I don't want to say I was fat, as I was about 180 to 210 from the ages of 14 to 18 at 6'2". She used to make fun of me for my injuries and my weight, which were very touchy subjects for me. Her favorite insult was, "You fat cripple loser." Or maybe, if you lost some weight, you wouldn't get injured so often. Back then, those insults really pissed me off, but I kept trying to be the older brother and just told her to shut up, fight back, or storm off. She also loved to embarrass me when friends were over by bringing up dumb stuff that I did when I was like 9 or 10. My friends are great people, but we tease each other a lot and would usually remember anything embarrassing we did and bring it up later. So whatever she said to them would always get back. I did talk with her if she could just shut up when I have my friends over, and she basically told me to piss off and that it's her house too. At this point in my life, 16 years old, I'm super pissed at how shitty she has treated me over the years. I know I caused some of it, and usually fought back when she got snippy and bratty at me, but to me, she started more fights than I did. I did try to talk to my dad and stepmom about the way that me and her treat each other, and they basically said that it's normal sibling rivalry. Her antics got a lot worse, and her words got more and more mean-filled and vile, which meant I would retaliate with just as mean and vile insults. I will not sit here and say that I wasn't just as mean to her as she was to me. I used to bully her relentlessly for these hair buns that she would wear from 13 to 14. If you want a picture, just look up the buns that Leia wore from Star Wars. I also told her plenty of times that I hate her and that I don't consider her family. I have apologized so much for those two because I do feel bad. Even though she hasn't apologized, I know she feels bad too. I bet there were some other moments, but they didn't happen to me, so I probably forgot them. I moved out when I was 18 without ever sending her a text message goodbye or even telling her that I was moving out. The past 5 years of unpleasantness between us made me happy that I didn't have to see her. A year later, she moves out, and I still resented her for how we treated each other. We got almost 2 years without speaking other than on holidays, and that's really only dry stuff and nothing big. I am now 21, and she is 20, and I got a text the other night asking why we aren't close like we were when we were kids. I basically said that I don't care to get along with you or get close because of how we treated each other as kids. She told me to grow up, and then not even an hour later, I get a call from my dad asking why I have so much hate for my sister, quote-unquote, years since we have lived together. I told him that I'll be cordial and won't cut her out of my life, but I don't need or want to be close with her. How do I go about telling her that I don't want us to be close yet until we both want to be close, but leaving the door open for her not to resent me? Can we still love each other? Edit. I would like to point out that I was just as mean to my stepsister. I don't have any examples because it's been 5 years, and it didn't stick with me like hers did, but our fighting growing up did go both ways. Edit 2. Some people have said that I shouldn't cut her out of my life, and I agree with that. I love her and want to be there for her, but I don't like her enough to be close with her. Edit 3. I added more to the story of how I was shitty to her too. In the comments, OP, when told maybe his sister matured and has changed, says, "Honestly, I do want a relationship at some point with her, but some insults are a bit too fresh and could still hurt. And I also want to explore life without being bogged down with a friendship that I don't want with a person that I wouldn't like. In due time, I would like there to be a close bond between us, just not yet. And don't get me wrong, I love her. And if she needed me, that I'd be there in a second, but I don't really want to have that let's go get drinks and be buddies types of relationship at this point. I know she knows that if any dude tried to harass her, that I'd be on them in a second. I remember that I knocked the daylights out of a dude who slapped her ass when we were at the beach. If she ever needed to talk to me about any advice, of course I'd be there for her. I just don't think that I want that super close relationship yet." Catwit says, "I don't think you should feel bad at all for not wanting to be close with her. Based on her response, she clearly doesn't feel bad about what she did. Her whole 'why aren't we close anymore' deal sounds like a way for her to try to get you to pretend that it never happened, while also not acknowledging or apologizing for the horrible things that she did. It sounds like you have and will be much happier without her playing a significant role in your life." And OP says, "Thanks for the comment. I love her as much as an older brother can, but I don't really want her in my life that much at this point. Maybe when we're older, it'll get better, but as of right now, I still think she is too unpleasant to get close with." Agnes Mort says, "I thought you might have been a bit unreasonable, and you should give it a try, but her response shut that down. She isn't willing to work on issues, she just wants you to dismiss your feelings and pretend that nothing ever happened. If she was able to apologize and meet you halfway in terms of getting to know each other again, then yeah, sure, you might get a good relationship, but saying, 'Oh, are you still mad over that?' confirms she doesn't. Keep doing what you're doing, be polite and cordial, don't hate her, but don't get too close. Explain it to your dad, but don't make it a big deal that she has to apologize for what she has done. Keep it conflict-free, and it's fine. Not everyone does have close relationships with their siblings." Not a Refrigerator says, I would love to hear this story from the other side. And OP says, she probably thinks I'm some monster holding onto the past and hating her for no reason and not wanting to be close. Not a Refrigerator replies, she probably thinks that you instigated everything, just how you seem to think that she did. Your parents, being the actual impartial people here, probably have it right, and you are both at fault. I honestly don't think you're as much of a victim as you're painting here. You seem to entirely gloss over your retaliation. You're not going to get anywhere following the advice of people here who don't seem to understand the fact that there are two sides to every story and are just telling you to continue in that victim role. And OP replies, oh, I know for a fact that I instigated plenty of fights. It has always been a two-way street for fights between us. In my opinion, she started more than me, but it did go both ways. Not a Refrigerator replies, okay, so why does your whole post read like a woe is me, my sister was so bad, she started all these fights and I only retaliated when she started them? You're not going to get any good advice if you only give one side of the story and don't mention that you were just as bad and instigated fights too. You'll only get bullshit answers like those given about how your sister is a terrible person and your parents are awful enablers. When those things aren't true, by admission, you were just as bad as her. If you want useful advice, you should probably repost the whole story. Yeah, we have unreliable narrators a lot of the time on these subreddits. It is par for the course. Then when people call them out for things that are inconsistent in the comments, they're always like, well, you weren't there, you don't know the full story. Tell me the full story, come on. At least OP made those edits earlier. I know that I read them out with them saying, oh yes, I did a lot of things too. I was just as mean to my stepsister. I get that. But those edits are an addendum that kind of gets glossed over a lot of the time. I don't know. If OP doesn't want a relationship with his sister, you don't have to have a relationship. There's nothing wrong with that. It's going to cause drama, though. I think that is something you can't really avoid. And now, on to the update. After our text convo that led to my dad calling me asking what's wrong between us, I texted her about meeting up at my place. This was the first time that we actually met/hung out outside of a family gathering. Before she came over, that realization gave me a new look on our relationship. The whole sit-down went well. We actually got along, and there wasn't any name-calling or anything mean. We talked about how we treated each other, and this was the first time that I've ever heard her apologize for how she treated me growing up, and I did the same. We talked about how the text conversation went, and I came to the conclusion that I still had the old image of how she was when I saw her at 17 and was using that to picture her now. She still kind of acts the same, kind of moody, but can hold it in so much better now. But it's a lot better. We talked it out and spent about half the day just hanging out, and I'll admit that I enjoyed it. I don't think that we'll be super duper close, but it's a step in the right direction, and there isn't a wall of tension between us anymore. Thank you all for the advice and comments. It really came in handy, and I appreciate it. And in the comments, Deleted says, I'm really envious, but extremely proud of ya. Up until now, I still can't make things right between my big sister and me, but that's okay. Maybe we just need to be mature and talk it out. And OP replies, give her a shot. Invite her to a coffee meetup. That's what we did, and it really helped. Make sure it's public so things can't escalate to an actual screaming match. Jelly Dove says, the parents suck here. Whenever my parents saw me and my sister fighting, they would never sit back and watch. The parents sort of effed up the situation as they did not regulate the kids. I think tweens and young teens are just understanding the social dynamics and structures of the world. They are bound to mess up. Thankfully, they are still young and can fix it. Tells you quite a bit about the parents that both kids moved out the second they turned 18. Can of Beans 9 says, sibling and I did not get along until we were adults either. I feel like it's probably common when parents don't take the tension seriously, or they play favorites like mine did. Or just get tired of being referees. I think my parents gave up, and that's when things got really mean between us. Thankfully, we had enough bad examples that we got along good now too. Glad that OP and sisters started off with a real apology. That, at least, is a good start. My mum had a policy of whooping both of our asses when we went at each other, and if we involved her, no matter who started it, because 99% of the time we were both at fault, and then she would just get so fed up that she'd apparently go and cry in frustration, which I only learned as an adult, lol, because there were a good 10 years we couldn't pass each other without annoying the other. My mum was just so tired of us both. And to date, I think that was the best policy because neither of us ever believed that there was a favorite, and she let us sort things out, and we never really hated each other. We just annoyed the ever-loving F out of each other. Like one time my issue with him was how he breathed this super annoying way, and he just overdid it once he figured out that it riled me up. But we never questioned the love. We grew closer once we both finished high school. So sometimes parents just can't win. They are humans too. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!